welcome to the Crumbling podcast, a podcast about how things are falling apart and throwing some fucking footballs with the boys. Just kidding. No, it's about how things are falling apart in terms of our sense of reality and how we can put them together. And I am one of your co-hosts, Sophia Florence, and I'm joined by one of my other co-hosts.
The name is Davin Dubois.
To give the folks listening a little bit of background, Andrew Hillary, one of our co-hosts that's been with us really since the beginning, had to step aside. He's just kind of trying to focus on himself. We are sad to lose him. We'll miss him. And if he ever wants to come back, he knows where to find us. Damn it. We love Andrew. He's wonderful and nothing but love and support for him. But yeah, he's stepping away from comedy and podcast stuff for a little bit to focus on himself. And I respect the shit out of that. So all love to him. I hope he's listening to this anyway. And I hope he knows that he's our homie. He could always text. Yeah, so we're trying out new co-hosts and stuff. I don't know how many we'll actually end up trying out, but we have one here with us tonight. And do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hello. Yes, hello. I am V, just like the main character in Cyberpunk. I'm going by the initial, not my real name, but here you go. Anyway, I am kind of a sociologist, generally in that area, and information scientist. I lumped that into eschatology. I study propaganda, I study information, I study mythology, I study history, I study lots of things: sociology, transnational organized crime, neo-fascist networks, and religion, things like that, of that nature generally. So I know things.
Nice. Knowing things is a good quality to have for a co-host for this specific show. And so we're going to do something a little bit different this time. I think you guys will really enjoy what we're doing here.
Hey listeners, it's Davin, the least funniest member of this trio, but the member with the sexiest voice. Over the previous series, we have explored Gamergate and climate change. Both have defined the land that we stand on. With climate change, we got a peek at the intentional inaction of actors who were aware of the science of our ozone layers getting fucked over more ways than the Knicks fan base whenever they're given hope. If you don't believe me about the Knicks fan base, well, Detroit just did snap a playoff losing streak against the Knicks that was around during the Obama era. During Gamergate, we got to see how online forums and social platforms have morphed into cesspools for incels and misogynists, the same way Stephen A. Smith morphed into a caricature of a competent and well-informed sports journalist. Also, he's debating running for president, but at this point in time, at this point in time, to quote the great Kevin Garnett, anything is possible.
That's true.
If you didn't get the point now, we are taking a deep dive off the end. While I talk about the way things are getting fucked over, let's talk about something a little bit more fun. We're going to become a sports podcast now.
Yes.
That's right. We're now the Crumbling, a podcast about sports, and we are proud to be brought to you by FanDuel.
Not sponsored by FanDuel.
I'm kidding about most of that. You statistically lose more money gambling than you make. But hopefully for the 5 of you who haven't clicked off yet, we're not changing much. I want to explore labor, one of the bigger historical labor wins in the last couple of years through the avenue of sports, specifically college athletes earning the right to get paid. This was a hard-fought battle over decades that started with the NCAA forming from a idea of protecting players, and there's a huge air quotes there, really it was protect capitalistic interests, into a court case that several court cases that ended up at the Supreme Court's doorsteps. I thought this would be like a one-episode thing. Nah, I was panicking on how I was going to fit all the information because the story gets weirdly wild, the amount of information that had to get packed in here. Because I'm guessing there's 5 people here who enjoyed just looking at ESPN in the background. To really understand how monumental this was as a win, we have to lay out the groundwork and introduce some interesting players in the story. No pun was intended by that, by the way. So, dear listeners, I want you to grab your jersey, get some popcorn, and find the comfy spot on the couch. We got some sports to cover. Our journey starts with every fanfic writer's favorite setting, school. Well, colleges. Most of the big name schools, and by big name, I mean your Princetons, your Stanfords, Michigans, Ohio States, all have fairly robust athletic departments that oversee their student athletes. Well, all those above schools and anyone who does have an athletic department is typically overseen by one institution, the NCAA. The NCAA, or National Collegiate Athletic Association, is the ultimate governing body for collegiate sports. This is how they describe their employees' work.
The employees at the NCAA's national office, headquartered in Indianapolis, Indiana, oversee all championships, manage programs that benefit student athletes, and support member committees that make rules and policies for college sports. Member schools and conferences ultimately decide which rules to adopt for their division, everything from recruiting and compliance to academics and championships.
The NCAA in itself is an organization meant to police member schools, count the money they make, and institute rules meant to keep their indentured servants, unpaid interns, student athletes That's the word we're going to go with. The student athletes. Yeah. Before we get too deep, I want to make something clear. Whenever I speak on the NCAA's treatments of athletes and their experiences, I'm speaking mostly about Division I, shorthand to D1, primarily in basketball and football, which are key money-making sports, the biggest revenue generators. Here's the NCAA's own distinction on what makes a school D1 versus the other two categories.
Among the three NCAA divisions, Division I schools generally have the biggest student bodies, manage the largest athletics budgets, and offer the highest number of athletic scholarships. Division II provides growth opportunities through academic achievement, learning in high-level athletics competition, and a focus on service to the community. The Division III experience offers participation in a competitive athletics environment that pushes college athletes to excel on the field and build upon their potential by tackling new challenges across campus.
They're kind of like, I don't want to say sweatshops to disparage sweatshops, but colloquially, it's like the sweatshop and you're not really getting credit. So you really love the game. The NCAA is essentially a monopoly on college athletics. They are the be-all, end-all for member schools and aspiring college athletes. Their closest competitor, the National Association of Intercollegiate Athletes, NAIA, only has 237 member schools compared to the NCAA's 1,100. The NCAA has a monopoly, and with, well, really no competition besides like the middling NAIA, they kind of set the market for college athletics. Even though the NCAA is a nonprofit, it's still big business. The product they're selling, though, are athletes. And to put this in perspective, I'm going to look at something I would wager most of our audience is very familiar with, the Oscars. According to Forbes, the latest Oscars, so 2025, had a total viewer count of 19.69 million people combined on both.
Sorry.
420 blaze it. 69, nice. Yeah. The Oscars had 19.69 million people watching on both ABC and Hulu. So I'm going to ask my two co-hosts, V and Sophia, would you like to guess the viewership numbers of the college football championship from earlier this year?
If I had to guess, it's going to be more than that because I feel like not as many people watch the Oscars as they do college football.
Yeah.
Like, granted, like I'm from Connecticut where we don't watch a lot of college football. We watch a lot of college basketball here because fucking UConn. But in the southern states, in a lot of other places around the country, even in New York, you've got like Syracuse and stuff where people,
Southern and Midwest.
Yeah.
The Southern and Midwest.
Yeah. The Southern and Midwest, like you have a lot of fans of college football. I mean, that's, it's a big deal. So I'm going to guess, anywhere up to like 25 million.
V, you want to wager a guess?
Yeah, I'm going to go with like 23 million or so.
Very good guess, both of you. The college football playoffs championships had a viewer count of 22.1 million people, as reported by ESPN. Now, I'm going to go with a little bit more of a niche sport, right? Football's huge. It's probably like one of the biggest things. To quote the old movie, it's one of the only things that take a day away from God. Yeah, it's the movie Will Smith, Concussion. Yeah, that was a line. It's like, you want to go.
Where did that come from? Oh, interesting.
Yeah, you want to go against the NFL? They took away God's day.
Ooh.
Hard line, right? Yeah. Writer stats on that one. Yeah. Yeah. That trailer almost made me want to watch that movie. I was like, this is sad. But anyway, we're going to focus on women's basketball. Much more of a niche sport that definitely needs like more respect and coverage. So people, please watch. Is really exciting. What do you think the total viewership for the 2024 Women's March Madness Championship was? That's like the big women's like basketball tournament championship game.
I mean, every conservative in America is fixated on women's sports right now. So,
seriously.
I'm going to guess it's the exact same amount as voted for Trump. So like something like 70 million.
I'm going to go a little lower than that. Once again, I'm going to estimate around 23 million just because I'm terrible at statistics. Okay. I'm terrible at it.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Honestly, that 23 million was a great guess.
Thank you.
It averaged a viewership of 18.7 million people on ABC, but peaked at 24 million.
Oh, well then.
Yeah, huge numbers. It eclipsed the college football playoff championship. Now, mind you, there was a background story to that. Like Caitlin Clark was playing. Also, Don Staley was playing. The TV gods couldn't craft like a more perfect like matchup.
Yep.
But that tournament on average like boosted the ratings. But anyway, these two televised NCAA championships hit numbers that are comparable comparable, if not greater than the Oscars, the biggest night in Hollywood. Well, who cares about those numbers besides sports nerds like me? Advertisers do. Every marketing team wants to get their product in front of the eyes of millions of people. That's why the NCAA tries to negotiate these TV deals. The TV deals will make use of all the eyes watching the college sports. TV is big business, a business that the NCAA has their hand in.
The NCAA owns the TV rights to all 89 championships. The NCAA does not own the rights to any regular season or conference championships collegiate athletics footage, with the exception of selected Division II football and Division I men's and women's basketball championships. In addition, the NCAA does not own the rights to any Division I football subdivision footage. In addition, the NCAA does not own the rights to any Division I football subdivision FBS footage.
What do y'all think about these numbers? Because I knew a lot of people watch, but I just personally found them kind of insane.
That's I cannot conceive of that many television sets doing that at once. Honestly,
I think being a child of the late 80s, early 90s, and hearing about ratings numbers when I was a kid, that's not crazy to think about, because I remember hearing about Oscars ratings, Emmy ratings, and all these other televised events, everything that was on TV. Ratings got talked about a lot when I was a kid. There's the whole Nielsen program, to figure out how many watchers are tuning into something. But it kind of slopped off, I think, because people now mostly watch things on the internet, and streaming services hide their numbers. There's no streaming service that really gives you all of their numbers.
I didn't realize that Nielsen didn't have tracking for that.
Yeah, they don't.
Fascinating.
The streamers are the only places that know their own traffic, and it's one of the things that makes it this kind of big mystery when shows get canceled off of Netflix and stuff. I remember when Santa Clarita Diet got canceled, which that was a show that was my life. I love that fucking show.
I'm so sorry. I had a similar relationship with Imposters, so it was.
I haven't seen that.
So good. It's. But only 2 seasons.
So that's the thing with Netflix, is that they will tend to give up on shows exactly after 2 seasons, but they don't share their ratings numbers. And that sucks for actors trying to negotiate kind of in the same way as what we're talking about here, where if you don't know the revenue being generated from your work, it makes it a lot harder to negotiate your contracts. It's intentional.
Jeez, what a rip.
Rough out here. Yeah, contract negotiations are always rough. The NCAA only owns certain rights, specifically the ones for championship games. Not to mention, they do not even own the rights to a critical money-making sport like college football. So you'd be correct in asking, what's the real benefit for the NCAA? Why are they even here? We're going to turn our attention to the co-conspirators in this entire fucked up system. The academic institutions. Can someone please cue the Phoenix Wright meme?
Objection!
That's the only way I know it's the objection.
Yes. Yes. The best way to think about the NCAA and the relationship to the universities it polices is in the relationship your company has to the human resources department. HR departments exist to protect the company from themselves. That's essentially only, if you're confused, also apologies if you work in HR, but you exist to stop someone in the company from fucking up and getting you sued into oblivion. There exists, and at least I hope they still exist by the time this episode comes out, laws that companies must abide by that are there to protect workers or to ensure workers' rights. HR departments are around to make sure the company also follows those specific laws. Now, it has to be mentioned that the company likes listening to HR departments so they do not get sued in oblivion by a mediocre employment rights lawyer. The NCAA functions in the same way by instituting policies and rules that the university must follow to ensure the college sports can keep going on with minimal risk to the school and system as a whole. We can look at the story of the NCAA's founding via their own words.
The rugged nature of early day football, typified by mass formations and gang tackling, resulted in numerous injuries and deaths and prompted many college and universities to discontinue the sport. In many places, college football was run by student groups that often hired players and allowed them to compete as non-students. Common sentiment among the public was that college football should be reformed or abolished. President Theodore Roosevelt summoned college athletics leaders to the 2 White House conferences to encourage reforms. In early December 1905, Chancellor Henry M. McCracken of New York University convened a meeting of 13 institutions to initiate changes in football playing rules. At a subsequent meeting, December 28th in New York City, 62 colleges and universities became charter members of the Intercollegiate Athletic Association of the United States. The IAA-US was constituted on March 31st, 1906, and took its present name, the NCAA, in 1910.
To give a little bit more context to that whole "it's too violent" thing was also spurred on that schools were getting sued. because student groups were running early games, lawsuits and widows of the men playing would often come in and say like, hey, because this is a student's thing, they were technically employees of the school. And schools were like, no, they weren't. Remember, nobody wants to be left holding the bag when insurance has to be paid out.
Yep.
Yeah. Fuck Teddy Roosevelt.
Yeah, it's rough.
He didn't like my people. And by my people, I mean Sicilian Americans.
That's really rude of him. Jeez.
What's the Hassan quote? POC, person of carbonara.
Person of carbonara.
Oh, fuck. Oh my God.
No, there was.
Did you never hear that? Did I send you that video?
I've never seen that. No.
Hassan has a running joke, and it also plays into the fact that like for a long time Italian people were not considered white.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. People, if you are a white person of Italian or Irish heritage, like honestly, like 75 or well, actually no, it's 2025, not like 2000. 100 years ago, you were not considered white. Like you had to be from England. But that's also because like y'all are the dopest white cultures. Y'all actually have good food and like good music.
Yeah.
Yep.
No offense to Eastern Europeans. I'm still coalescing with y'all. I was having a real fun sociology talk with a friend where I was just like, yeah, white people, its definition is expanded. Like another 30 years is going to include like Asians.
You're probably not wrong.
Yeah, no, really.
I know I'm not. It's like one of those where like I tell someone, like, you know, you weren't, you know what? Different episode of Crumbs.
Yes.
In its mission, the NCAA effectively institutes rules that keep student athletes eligible as, big air quotes, student athletes. And that there is no funny business going on that could impact the, big air quotes, fairness of the athletic system. Now, we're going to ignore the contradiction regarding fairness of a competitive endeavor like college sports in favor of something else, the word amateurism. The NCAA deems all college sports as amateur sports, i.e. any college athlete is not deemed a professional in the specific sport they are attempting to play. If at any given time they reach a professional status, the amateur status is revoked and they can never be given back. And you can only play college sports if you're an amateur. At the time, the reasoning for separation was twofold. One, the college sports system was not to be considered a professional league. Instead, extracurricular student athletes could choose to participate in. You know, an extracurricular that just generates millions to billions of dollars yearly. The second branch was that a professional athlete is typically deemed way above the skill level of an amateur. Now, at this time, you're probably asking what makes someone an amateur. The simple answer is they're not being paid to play their sport. In episode 2, I'm going to tear that definition apart, so make sure you put alerts on for this podcast when it drops. According to the NCSA college recruiting firm, CSA College Recruiting, a firm dedicated to aiding prospective student athletes find potential matches, summarizes how student athlete could lose their amateur status: receiving compensation that exceeds actual necessary expenses, receiving compensation for media appearances based on your athletic ability or frame, endorsing explicitly or implicitly commercial products or services, or in the fourth way, accepting prize money beyond the actual necessary expenses. The notion of not paying players seems very odd when you factor in athletes receiving scholarships. I have to revisit the term fairness that I used earlier. When I use the word fairness, what I mean is that there's a level of competition that keeps any matchup audiences want to see exciting enough to attract televised eyes. Is the game, match, tournament, whatever, interesting enough to have enough viewerships to convince advertisers to give the station money to air the competition? The more eyes potential competition can attract, the more increased revenue. All that ties back to fairness. Now, I want to walk my co-hosts through a little game. Y'all ready?
Yep.
Yeah.
I want you guys to close your eyes and pretend that you're a highly recruited prospect who, and let's assume that you're going D1 and your college is going to be paid for with your athletic prowess. We'll go with Sophia first. How would you go about selecting a college?
I mean, I would look for the ones that had the best mentorship opportunities, the ones where people were doing, theoretically, like if I was younger, I don't know that I was cognizant enough to look out for specific kinds of research, but I would look for ones that had programs that I was interested in taking, classes that I was interested in taking, teachers that seemed to mentorship opportunities, maybe small class size, stuff like that.
I would be the same exact thing. Yeah, pretty much. That's the right way to do it.
It's very bold of you to assume that a school is going to let a athlete that they are giving scholarship money take any interesting classes and not risk their eligibility.
Oh.
Yeah, it gets dark. I had to cut a lot of depressing material out of it.
Oh, that's heartbreaking.
There's some other choices that we all probably will look at is like proximity to your home location, the area that's in the school itself, like the culture of the school, the history, a bunch of things, right? But at no point in time was the amount of non-scholarship money ever mentioned. AKA, how much am I getting beyond my scholarship? Under the NCAA's rules regarding fairness, that isn't a factor because schools should not be giving out any money that isn't tied to a scholarship. Even then, scholarship money is typically limited to what the cost of attendance to the school would be. Now, I'm not saying scholarship money is useless, but we are going to be honest about scholarships. First, only some athletes are even given scholarships. Not a full ride, just receiving a scholarship has hovered around 60% of the athletes. In 2014, the number was 53%. That's taken from nfhs.org. And in 2024, the number was around 59%. And that's taken from the NCAA's recruiting fact sheet. Even if every athlete was given a full ride, that does not address a pretty fair problem with the scholarship system. It's a recreation of the company town model.
In some situations, company towns developed out of a paternalistic effort to create a utopian workers' village. Churches, schools, libraries, and other amenities were constructed in order to encourage healthy communities and productive workers. Saloons, or other places or services believed to be negative influences were prohibited. In other cases, the company's motivations were less ideal. The remoteness and lack of transportation prevented workers from leaving for other jobs or to buy from other independent merchants. In some cases, company paid employees with a type of money that was called scrip, which was only good at company stores. And that was taken from the VCU Social Welfare Library. And yeah, I have ancestors that were coal miners. And part of my family comes from the whole company town environment. It's something that I grew up hearing about, something that made me a little more radical about labor than a lot of people and think about it a lot more, which has invariably got me into trouble in a lot of times in my life. I would say even, when these companies said that they were making company towns for quote unquote good reasons, at first they would say that was, the PR message and people believed it. And, maybe there's some tiny grain of truth there, but it was always, when pressure was applied to those companies, it quickly became pretty obvious that this was just a way to lock workers into working there and never leaving them and totally fucking them over, just absolutely screwing their lives up and hiding the detrimental effects of things happening to those workers. If you control the workers, you control their media environment, you control what they're doing every day, then nobody hears when you do something evil.
Yep.
Yeah. Now, if you find my comparison between universities and company towns to be a tad bit hyperbolic, I kindly ask that you hold your judgment for a hot second while I lay out some bare facts. Forget the stunning image of pristine academic buildings and the idea of entitled jocks potentially making money for simply catching a ball and journey with me. Oftentimes, the company town itself was in a secluded area or a company owned a majority of the land around the town. If a worker lost their job, then they were essentially lost the right to live in the town and effectively forcing them into exile. While each company town was unique unto itself, the one thing that the company towns shared with was abject poverty that blanketed the town. The modern scholarship system mimics this in a ton of ways. First of all, most colleges are in smaller towns or secluded areas. Most major colleges encapsulate areas where they are a primary employer or so heavily intertwined within the town that messing with them could threaten those not associated with the school system. 2, athletes who accept a scholarship are provided with room, board, class, etc., all in exchange for their labor. I am not saying it's a bad thing that they are provided these points. I know someone's going to say a judgment about that. I'm not saying that. Just listen to the words. Can you understand the words coming out my mouth?
It's the waffle pancake problem or whatever it was. Yep. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That tweet. Everybody knows that tweet.
No additional fiat currency is exchanged beyond that. If an athlete loses their scholarship, then they don't have a ton to show for it and definitely no savings. They're forced to take out backbreaking loans or to leave the school and whatever network that they may have built while there. It's a fucked up situation before we even get to the rumors that athletes had their major choice limited. We're told to avoid certain professors and teachers, and we're even dictated on being threatened if they skip practice for class. Bomani Jones, who is a sports journalist, a very highly regarded one, by the way, often writes about race as well. He tells a story of how he either went to North Carolina or Duke, and he used to be a tutor there, and he tells the story of how someone had asked them, hey, what if we get like a football or basketball player? I think it was mostly basketball because they're big basketball schools, and it's like a hard course and they're failing. And he laughed at them. And professor laughed. He was like, the school's never going to take the risk on even letting them take this class with us. Remember, at this level, when you have millions of dollars online, TV deals and all that, those are no longer athletes. They're investment pieces. All participants in the system know it's stupid. That's why schools and boosters were paying players under the table. Remember how I said, like, there's no outright money being exchanged? There's a table we're sitting at and some money was exchanging hands. The Secret Base, a sports journalism YouTube channel, has an incredible documentary. It's in 4 parts, each 30 minutes, so watch it at your own leisure, by the name of Foul Play, that details the system of players being paid under the table and the consequences for players trying to usurp the system. I could not recommend this enough. I watch it like a couple of times per year. For its time, it's some of the greatest investigative journalism. So if you have a couple of segments, like watch it on your lunch break in parts, they make it very easy to follow. And it involves like lawsuits, players being threatened, a reenactment of like Deep Voice. It's amazing. It's very old. If you guys want to skip it because you're not really interested in the documentary, all you need to know is that colleges allegedly would give gifts of cash or other valuables to high-profile recruits to get them to come play for the school. And I'm not talking like $1,000 or $5,000. I'm talking upwards of $40,000, $50,000. There's an old joke amongst recruits in colleges saying, why did they go there? That's so far. It's like, oh, well, they found a turkey stuffed with cash, or, hey, my dad got, the old joke is, oh, my dad suddenly got a new job in the town of the school that's worth a lot more money, or there was a turkey that showed up around the holidays and turns out it was stuffed with cash. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. A lot of this was allegedly done by boosters because if you can't outright pay a player, more often than not, players like money, you can put two and two together.
Money turducken.
Yeah. The real rub of the situation is that, if caught, the hardest penalties come down on the athletes, who more often than not come from disenfranchised working class backgrounds. Let me ask both of you. Say hypothetically you're going to go to a college, a pretty big state school, and you're going to do a thing anyway. And someone said, hey, I'll pay you $40,000 to come to this one school who's already on your list of potential schools. $40K tax-free. You taking it?
That's a life-changing amount of money.
Yeah.
When I was growing up, I made $11,000 a year living in New Haven, which, for people who are listening and don't know, New Haven is where Yale is. And there are a lot of people that are kept in perpetual poverty here for similar reasons, but a lot of them are, just people that work around the campus. I was one of those people. I didn't work for Yale directly. I worked for a bunch of different food services that were around there, and it sucked. It was fucking awful. Don't recommend it. And so, 40,000 years would have been 3 times my salary, well, more than 3 times my salary. And I would have been like, wow, that's going to change my life forever. And it doesn't. When you get the $40,000, you just spend it on other shit that you weren't able to buy before. But, there's some threshold for savings there, but it does make a lot of difference. I would 100% take $40,000 to go to a slightly different school.
Yeah. If you're a highly recruited athlete, ones who get coverage on ESPN, where everybody knows their name, they're featured in the magazines, it really doesn't matter where you go to school. It's such a marginal thing because your name's going to be a known commodity. Most of the time, you'll have access to campus services because, once again, in the very depressing way, you're an investment. Really, there's ties to slavery there that the book $40 Million Slaves gets into way better than I can. But yeah, so here are the risks involved for schools and players eventually violating that. The schools are going to get fines and then have limits put on athletic activities that they can participate in. Maybe lack of televised games they get, which in turn increases the revenue and eyes on them. A lot of time athletic departments operate at a cost a university, but it fulfills the role of extra marketing because athletics is such a big thing in American culture. The athletes are the ones who carry the biggest penalties and risk themselves. Not only do they risk reputational damage, it could impact their future career. They could be suspended for a year or have awards revoked. If they were one of the very few who gets to go on to do professional sports and they have to participate in the draft, then character concerns could come up, all because a child who more than likely comes from a working class background was supposed to have the maturity and wisdom that, let's face it, most grown folk don't have to say no, to do it for the love of the game. Also, there's the point that they're going to be ranked over the coals nationally, and a magnifying glass is going to be held up to every picture they've ever taken, and they're going to be called the notorious T word, a thug. But I mean, come on, that entitled athlete gets what's coming to them, right? The last point that I want to leave you all with is a discussion about why universities could not pay players. Before, I had mentioned fairness. The fairness is also the driving factor for the rule. We look at universities as institutions that have a lot of money, more than the average person, right? It's an organization unto itself that receives federal funding, but still amongst themselves, there's an economic disparity between them. If schools were previously allowed to outright pay players, then there's a coalition power for the rich schools that are typically reside in the North, where northern states have a lot more outright cash to work with, or private schools such as Notre Dame and Southern Methodist University, who have big donors with big pockets. If you guys don't know, SMU, Southern Methodist University, is in Texas near oil money. And that shit goes far. Yeah. These schools whose donors could essentially write a really big check. Players now can effectively be paid. I will get into the finer points of that system because it is complicated and would extend this way more than I feel comfortable allowing our editor to take on tonight. However, under the new system, they say the evaluation is $40 million because the college quarterback is going to need $2 million as a going rate per year. Yeah, the numbers have gone insane and it's kind of turned. So I've now in my old man yells at clouds. Back in my day, we played for the love of the game era. But the point still stands. In college football, specifically Ohio State, The quarterback is paid, so his offensive line is probably comprised of 5 people, a value for $5 million. Maybe the left tackle's getting $2 million himself. Well, you need a big name receiver and a big name running back to spell them out. You see where it's going? There's not a lot of schools who can outright write those checks and don't have a donor base, except for maybe like 10 of them. That's the end goal, though. That was the original inception, besides the fact that the NCAA didn't want schools having to suffer the penalty of players getting hurt. It was to keep fairness. If TV revenue is the thing that's driving this, nobody wants to watch a one-sided beatdown. That's not fun. But watching a competitive endeavor that comes down to the last minute and you're at the edge of your seat, and then it becomes water cooler talk. Oh man, did you see the end of the game? Like, oh yeah, Duke got bad call, but that guy, you become the topic of conversation. And the way you keep that balance and make sure schools are as competitive as possible is making sure the rich schools kind of can't come in and just buy their way to the top. They have to still rely on how good of a coach you are. For lack of a better term, it's a pull yourself up by the bootstraps mentality, which about how ironic it is that these big institutions, a lot of them exist in very deep red states, value a sense of fairness and economic policy that stops rich people from bullying the poor people. But I still have another episode to fucking work with, and I'll be back. So you guys, what do you think? I saw it get a little depressing in the previous paragraph where it's just like, oof.
Yeah, it's difficult subject matter. It's funny because like I think a lot of people will, hear that we're doing, an episode of football and be like, what the fuck? Like this isn't, the disinformation podcast. This isn't the politics podcast that I'm used to. But I think people will see the tie-ins pretty quickly that this is, another expression of kind of the worst elements of capitalism.
I was going to say, it's such a huge cultural thing that like you can't avoid it, every single day. You see it everywhere. So like, I don't know.
There was a ton of material I left off about the racism that's also intertwined in college sports. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a ton of the arguments around not paying players from the common person. Delved into that weird line of like, are you trying to say something racist without using a racial epithet? Because it's like, well, why do they deserve it? When you look at the actual schedule of a college athlete, you're probably waking up at 5 a.m. You have to go work out twice a day. And these aren't just like working out same time. It's training to be competitive against, I'm going to say it this way, genetic freaks, because almost every college athlete is a genetic freak. On top of that, you have to adhere to like a normal student schedule. The name Shabazz Napier is going to be very heavily. That's a Connecticut star who kind of turned the system upside down and almost got the NCAA set on fire with a simple interview. Yeah, it was rough. But we've reached the end of this episode. Any pluggables for y'all?
Obviously, I want to plug our Patreon. If you like what we're doing here and you want to hear more of it, we do have, special episodes on the Patreon. That is patreon.com/the Crumbling Podcast. If you want to check out our show notes and other articles we're writing, we do have a newsletter that is thecrumbling.beehive.com. And Beehive is spelled all fucking stupid. It's BEEHIIV. So it's more like
Beehive.
Yeah.
It's spelled like a Pokemon's name.
It really is.
It is spelled like a Pokemon's name, but it also makes me think of saying HIIV. I'm like, oh, that's so close to HIV, man. Yeah. I feel like they should have just kept that in a way. Don't be HIV. Please, take PrEP and wear protection during sex if you're gonna have it. You don't have to have it. But
Beehive, the transmissible bug poison Pokemon.
Oh no!
But we are using Beehive for our newsletter. I got put on a starter pack for scientific shit posters and another one for medical shit posters. And I'm like, thank God people recognize me for my shit posting and nothing else.
Fuck. Fuck. I want to be on that list because, as you know, when I had my Twitter, I was known for like the greatest timeline ever because it would just be jokes, roasting people, twerking, and the occasional conversation about sucking dick.
Amazing.
And Sophia was here for my heyday. I had a great run.
Yeah. Good fucking times. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. Again, check out our Patreon if you like us. I said the URL a few minutes ago, but we'll say it again. Patreon.com/Crumbling Podcast. And we will see you guys again in 2 weeks.
Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.